You have to give him to me.
Luca led Elena through marble corridors that echoed with chaos. Doctors in white coats shouted in rapid Italian she couldn't follow. Medical equipment beeped frantically. And beneath it all, that terrible, weakening cry. Then she heard him. A man's voice, raw, broken, absolutely feral with grief. "Respira!" The roar shook the chandeliers. "Respira, Enzo!" They burst into a nursery painted in soft blues, now transformed into a war room. 4 medical professionals surrounded a crib, their faces masks of helpless terror. And standing over them all, his designer suit rumpled, his dark hair wild, was Alessandro Vitale. He was magnificent and terrifying. Tall, powerful, his steel-gray eyes bloodshot and burning with the kind of rage that could level cities. In his arms, he cradled a tiny bundle wrapped in blue. The baby's lips were turning dusky. His tiny chest barely moved. "Do something!" Alessandro roared at the doctors. "I pay you millions, and you stand there like—" The baby's breathing stopped completely. Time fractured. A doctor lunged forward with a resuscitation bag. Alessandro's face went white as death itself. His hands that had killed, that commanded empires, trembled as he held his dying son. Elena's body moved on pure instinct. "Per favore," her voice cut through the panic. "Io posso aiutarlo." "I can help him." Every head turned. Alessandro's eyes locked onto her. This rain-soaked stranger in a cheap coat, this nobody who dared speak. "Who the hell?" he started. "I can feed him," Elena said, switching to broken English. "Natural. My body. I still have milk. He needs—" "Get her out," Alessandro snarled. But the lead doctor, an older man with desperate eyes, grabbed Alessandro's arm. "Don Alessandro, we've tried everything. His stomach rejects the formula. If she can— She's a stranger off the street," the baby gasped, a horrible rattling sound. Then nothing. Alessandro looked at his son, at the blue tinge spreading across that tiny face, at death reaching for the only thing in this world he'd ever loved without condition. His eyes met Elena's. She saw his soul crack open. "Do it," he whispered. Then louder, to the doctors. "Everyone out. Now." The room emptied in seconds. Only Alessandro remained, standing like a sentinel, his weapon visible in his shoulder holster as Elena sat in the nursing chair. Her hands shook as she unbuttoned her blouse. She'd never felt more exposed, more vulnerable. "If this is a trick—" Alessandro's voice was death itself. "It's not," Elena whispered, cradling the limp baby. "Please, little one. Please." She brought Enzo to her breast. For 3 eternal seconds, nothing happened. Then his survival instinct kicked in. He latched, and he drank. The silence was deafening. Then, a full breath. Then another. Color bloomed in Enzo's cheeks like roses in snow. Alessandro's knees buckled. He caught himself against the wall, one hand over his mouth, his whole body shaking with silent sobs. 20 minutes later, Enzo slept peacefully in the crib. Elena was buttoning her blouse when the door opened. A man in an expensive suit entered, Alessandro's lawyer. "Miss Santos," the lawyer said in perfect English, sliding papers across the changing table. 200,000 euros, all debts erased, new identity papers. You'll live here. You'll tell no one how you feed the child. If you do, or you'll face criminal charges. If he gets sick, the blame falls on you. Elena's hands trembled as she looked at Alessandro. He stood in shadow, his face unreadable. "You saved him," Alessandro said quietly. "For that, you'll have everything money can buy." He stepped closer, and Elena smelled gunpowder and expensive cologne. "But understand this. You belong to me now. Until he's weaned, you're mine. Try to run. I'll find you," Elena finished, her voice steadier than she felt. Alessandro's eyes narrowed. Then something shifted in his expression. Respect, or perhaps recognition. "Sign it," he commanded. Elena picked up the pen. She thought of Javier, of deportation, of dying alone in a foreign country. She signed. "Ben," Alessandro murmured. He walked to the door, then paused. "One more thing, Elena. My enemies are everywhere. They'll come for him again. And when they do..." He turned, his face transformed into something absolutely merciless. "They'll have to go through you first." The door closed. Elena looked at the sleeping baby, at the contract that had just made her both savior and prisoner. Outside, lightning split the sky, and somewhere in the villa she heard footsteps, multiple sets, coming closer. The nursery wing was larger than any home Elena had ever known. Silk wallpaper, marble bathroom, a bed so soft it felt like sleeping on clouds. But the windows had bars hidden behind velvet curtains, and armed guards stood outside her door 24 hours a day. A gilded cage was still a cage. Enzo was thriving. In just 7 days, his cheeks had filled out, his skin glowed with health, and his cries grew stronger. And Elena watched him gain weight with a fierce pride that terrified her. He wasn't her son, but her body didn't know the difference. Neither, apparently, did her heart. Alessandro was a ghost in his own home. She'd catch glimpses of him, a shadow in the doorway at 3 a.m., watching her rock Enzo, his face unreadable in the dim light. He never spoke, never came closer, just watched with those steel-gray eyes that seemed to devour them both. "Stai attenta," Maria the cook whispered one morning, pressing espresso into Elena's hands. "Be careful. Men who get too close to the dawn, they disappear. Last housekeeper asked too many questions. They found her car in the river." Elena's blood ran cold. That afternoon, she got lost searching for clean towels. Instead, she found a room filled with monitors, security footage, and there, or on the center screen, recordings from the nursery. Her breath caught. Alessandro sat alone in that room, rewinding the same clips over and over. Elena feeding Enzo. Enzo sleeping. His scarred hand reaching toward the screen, almost touching the image of his son, before pulling back. His expression shifting between grief so profound, it looked like drowning, and something else. Something possessive. Hungry. She backed away before he could sense her presence. The breathing episode happened on day 8. Enzo woke screaming at 2 a.m., his tiny body rigid, his breaths coming in horrible, shallow gasps. Elena's panic was immediate and absolute. "Aiuto!" she screamed. "Help!" The door burst open. Alessandro appeared in silk pajama bottoms, and nothing else, his chest scarred, a gun in his hand. Behind him, Luca with a medical bag. "Oh, he can't breathe!" Elena's voice broke. Alessandro was at her side instantly, his trained fingers checking Enzo's airways. "It's a spasm. From the trauma, his body remembers. Do something." Elena's fury was incandescent. She cradled Enzo against her chest, rocking him with desperate intensity. "Non ti lascerò morire," she whispered fiercely. "I won't let you die." Something in her voice, some primal protective rage, reached through Enzo's panic. His breathing steadied. Slowed. Normalized. Alessandro stared at her. At this woman who'd transformed from frightened refugee into lioness in seconds. When Enzo finally slept, Elena was trembling. She felt Alessandro's hand cover hers, rough, scarred, shaking as badly as her own. "Grazie, Elena," he whispered, his voice raw. "Grazie." For the first time, he didn't look like a Don. He looked like a terrified father. "Prego," she whispered back. "You're welcome." The shift was seismic. The next evening, Alessandro appeared in the nursery with a leather book. "You're Italian," he said gruffly. "It's terrible. If you're going to stay, you'll learn properly." So began the strangest intimacy Elena had ever known. Each night, while Enzo slept between them in the massive bed, Alessandro taught her, his deep voice correcting her pronunciation, his hand steadying hers as she wrote, the space between them charged with something neither dared name. "Il bambino," he'd say, the baby. "Il bambino," she'd repeat. "La familia," the family. "La familia." Their eyes would meet. Hold. Break away. On day 12, Enzo smiled for the first time. A real, gummy, gorgeous smile directed at no one and everyone. Elena gasped with joy. Alessandro's breath caught. "Dio mio," he whispered. My God. For one perfect moment, the three of them existed in a bubble of pure happiness. A father. A mother. A child. Then Elena's phone buzzed, a number she didn't recognize. She answered without thinking, heavy breathing. Then a voice that turned her blood to ice. "Hola, mi amor." Javier's voice oozed through the speaker. "Found you." The line went dead. Elena looked up to find Alessandro watching her, his expression transformed into something absolutely lethal. "Who?" he asked quietly. "Was that?" Capitano Ricci arrived on a gray morning with 3 officers and a briefcase full of questions. He was silver-haired, sharp-eyed, and completely unimpressed by the Vitale villa's grandeur. "Don Vitale," he said with cold politeness, "I'm investigating your son's remarkable recovery. The hospital reported severe failure to thrive, yet now—" He glanced toward the nursery where Enzo's healthy cries echoed. "A miracle, they say." Alessandro's face was stone. "My son is strong, like his father." "And this woman?" Ricci's eyes fixed on Elena like a hawk spotting prey. "Miss Santos, who appeared?" He consulted his notes. "The exact day your son's condition improved. Quite a coincidence." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. "Miss Santos is a certified infant specialist," Alessandro said smoothly. "Hired through a private agency in Madrid. Her credentials are impeccable." "I'd like to see those credentials." "Of course." Alessandro nodded to Luca. "Have them sent to the Capitano's office by noon." Elena barely breathed. Those credentials didn't exist. After Ricci left, Alessandro cornered her in the hallway. "To the chapel. Now." She found him there an hour later, lighting candles before a marble Madonna. Elena knelt in the pew, her hands clasped in desperate prayer. "Perdonami," she whispered. "Forgive me." "God forgives easier than the carabinieri," Alessandro said behind her. She turned. His face was illuminated by flickering candlelight, making him look like a Renaissance devil. Beautiful and damned. "By tomorrow, you'll have a doctorate in pediatric nutrition from Universidad Complutense. Employment history. References." His voice was matter-of-fact. "My lawyers work fast." "You're making me a criminal," Elena whispered. "I'm making you invisible to the law. There's a difference." He moved closer. "Do you understand what happens if they discover the truth? You go to prison. Enzo goes into state care, and His jaw clenched. I lose everything again." Elena stared at the Madonna's serene face. "I never wanted this life." "Nobody chooses this life," Alessandro said quietly. "It chooses you. And now, it's chosen you too." That afternoon, 3 lawyers drilled her for hours. Names, dates, fabricated patients, invented research. Alessandro stood in the corner, watching her transform from Elena Santos into Dr. Elena Reyes. When she stumbled over a detail, his hand landed on her shoulder, warm, steadying. "Again," he murmured near her ear, his breath ghosting across her neck. "Più lentamente." Slower. The proximity made her dizzy. She could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. When she got it right, his fingers tightened with approval. Brava, he whispered, and the praise felt more intimate than any touch. The documents passed inspection. Ricci left frustrated but empty-handed, but the reprieve was brief. That night, Elena overheard voices in Alessandro's study. She pressed against the wall, listening. The Russos are asking questions. It was Salvatore, Alessandro's consigliere, the silver-haired man who'd attended Enzo's baptism. They hear the boy is strong now. They're circling. Let them circle. And the woman, Alessandro, she knows too much. When the boy is weaned, perhaps. The silence was terrifying. Perhaps what, Salvatore? Alessandro's voice could have frozen the sun. It would be cleaner. One less liability. One less. She's family now. The words were a death sentence to anyone who disagreed. We protect family. Is that unclear? Of course, Don Vitale. My apologies. Elena's relief lasted exactly 3 seconds, because then she heard Salvatore's voice again, barely audible. Family can be the most dangerous liability of all. She backed away, her heart in her throat. But she wasn't watching where she was going. Her elbow hit a decorative vase. It crashed to the marble floor, exploding like a gunshot. The study door flew open. Alessandro stood silhouetted in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Behind him, Salvatore smiled, a thin, cold smile that promised nothing good. Elena, Alessandro said carefully. How long have you been standing there? Before she could answer, Luca appeared at the end of the hallway, his face urgent. Don Vitale, we have a breach. South perimeter. 3 men. They're asking for the woman. Alessandro's eyes went deadly. What woman? The Spanish one, by name. Luca's hand went to his weapon. They say they're here to collect what belongs to them. Elena's knees went weak. Javier. He'd found her. Alessandro turned to her slowly. Is there something you need to tell me, Elena? After Alessandro's men dealt with Javier, Elena didn't ask how, and Alessandro didn't tell. Everything changed. He announced they were going to Venice. The Carnival ball, he said, watching her feed Enzo in the morning light. Every family attends. We'll show them the Vitale air is strong, that I am strong. You want to parade a 3-week-old baby in front of mobsters? Elena's voice rose. I want to parade my family. The possessive edge in his voice made her skin prickle. And that includes you. The transformation began that afternoon. A team of stylists descended. When Elena emerged in the sapphire blue gown, silk that clung to every curve she'd forgotten she had, Alessandro stopped mid-conversation with Luca. His eyes went dark. Bellissima, he breathed. Then he produced a velvet box. Inside lay a diamond choker that could fund a small country. Your grandmother's, Elena whispered, touching the stones with trembling fingers. Queens need crowns. He fastened it around her throat, his fingers lingering on her pulse point. And you, Elena, you're no longer the help. Venice at night was a fever dream. Their water taxi cut through black canals toward the Ca' Rezzonico Palace, ablaze with lights and masked revelers. Elena held Enzo while Luca secured the antique pram. Alessandro's hand settled possessively at her waist. Stay close, he murmured. And remember, you belong to me tonight. They entered the ballroom like visiting royalty. 1,000 eyes turned. Whispers rippled through the masked crowd. Alessandro's introduction was deliberate. Signorina Santos, my son's governess. But his eyes dared anyone to believe that's all she was. Then the Russos arrived. Don Tommaso, a bull of a man with dead eyes, and his son, Marco, who smiled like a shark tasting blood. Vitale, Tommaso said, approaching. I hear your boy lives. How unexpected. He thrives, Alessandro replied coldly. Marco leaned over the pram, his fingers, stained yellow from cigarettes, reaching for Enzo's blanket. Elena moved without thinking. She caught his wrist in an iron grip. "Toccalo e perdi la mano," she said clearly. "Touch him and lose the hand." The ballroom went silent. Marco's face flushed crimson. But Alessandro's expression, pride mixed with something fierce and primal, stopped any retaliation. "The lady has spoken," Alessandro said softly. "I suggest you listen." Tommaso pulled his son back. "Quite the governess you've acquired, Vitale." "She's learned more than Italian," Alessandro replied, his hand tightening on Elena's waist. When the orchestra began, Alessandro handed Enzo to Luca and pulled Elena onto the dance floor. His hand splayed across her lower back, burning through silk. Her palm rested on his chest, feeling his heart hammer beneath expensive wool. "You've never waltzed," he murmured, guiding her through the steps. "Follow my lead. Trust me." Their bodies moved together, dangerously close. His lips brushed her ear as he whispered instructions in Italian, and endearments she wasn't supposed to understand. "Oh, Mia," he breathed. "Mine." "Why don't you ever hold him?" Elena asked suddenly. "Your own son. You watch us, but you never—" Alessandro's jaw tightened. "Because I'm afraid I'll break him. Everything I touch, it dies or it leaves." "Then learn not to be afraid," Elena challenged, her eyes fierce. "He needs his father, not just his protector." Something cracked in Alessandro's carefully constructed walls. He pulled her closer, their faces inches apart. Around them, cameras flashed. Tomorrow, the underworld would see this photograph. Don Alessandro Vitale and his mystery woman, looking at each other like nothing else existed. The music swelled. Alessandro's hand slid up her spine. Elena's breath caught. Then Luca was there, his face ashen. "Don, the pram. Someone switched it. This isn't Enzo." Elena's world tilted. Alessandro went from man to predator in a heartbeat. He tore back the blankets to reveal a doll, expertly wrapped. Pinned to its chest was a note in blood-red ink. "We have your heir. Cadario. 30 minutes. Come alone, or the baby drowns." Alessandro's roar shook the chandeliers. But Elena was already running, shoving through the crowd, her heels abandoned, the diamond choker forgotten. She only had one thought, one desperate prayer. Enzo. Behind her, she heard Alessandro's voice, cold as death itself. "Lock down Venice. No one leaves. And someone find me Salvatore. Now." They found Enzo in a gondola beneath Cadario. Cold, terrified, but alive. A warning, not an execution. Alessandro had cradled him with shaking hands while Elena wept into the baby's blanket. The message was clear. We can reach him anytime we want. Now, past midnight in the Hotel Danieli's presidential suite, Elena nursed Enzo, while Venice glittered beyond the windows. Alessandro stood on the terrace, a silhouette against the lights, his shoulders rigid with barely contained violence. "He's asleep," Elena whispered finally. Alessandro turned. For a long moment, he just watched her. This woman who'd run through Venice in a ball gown, who'd fought her way through his security to search every canal, who loved his son like he was born from her own body. "Giuliana didn't love him," Alessandro said abruptly. "She didn't love me either." Elena stayed quiet, sensing he needed to bleed this poison out. She had an affair with a Russo lieutenant, got pregnant, tried to pass the baby as mine. His voice was hollow. "I found out. Demanded DNA test. Enzo was mine. But the stress, the betrayal, triggered premature labor. She hemorrhaged. Alessandro. I wasn't there when she died. I was across the city, having her lover killed." He laughed bitterly. "I chose vengeance over my wife." "What kind of man?" "The kind who was already betrayed," Elena said fiercely. She made her choices. You made yours. And you? Alessandro moved closer. What choices brought you here? Elena's hands tightened on the blanket. Javier, my boyfriend. He got me pregnant to trap me. When I tried to leave, her voice cracked. He pushed me down the stairs. 4 months pregnant. I lost everything. Alessandro's expression went murderous. I escaped with money borrowed from people I'll never be able to repay. Came to Italy, started over. She met his eyes. And then I met you. And now you're trapped again. No, Elena said softly. Now I'm choosing to stay. The air between them crackled. Alessandro crossed the room in 3 strides. His hand cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. Elena's breath hitched. Elena! The terrace window exploded inward. Glass rained down like deadly snow. Men in black tactical gear rappelled through the opening, weapons drawn. Alessandro shoved Elena behind him, his gun appearing from nowhere. Enzo! Elena screamed. A man lunged for the bassinet. Elena didn't think. She grabbed the silver espresso pot, still scalding hot, and hurled the contents into his face. His scream was inhuman. She swung the empty pot like a weapon, connecting with another attacker's skull. Get down, Alessandro roared. Gunfire erupted. Feluca burst through the suite door with 4 men. The elegant room became a slaughterhouse. Alessandro moved like death itself, precise, efficient, utterly brutal. He didn't just kill, he destroyed. When the silence finally fell, 5 bodies lay scattered across marble-stained red. Alessandro stood in the center, chest heaving, covered in blood that wasn't his. Elena crouched over Enzo's bassinet, the baby somehow still sleeping, her body a human shield. She was shaking violently. Alessandro crossed to her in 2 strides. He pulled her up, wrapped himself around both of them, a fortress of muscle and violence and desperate protection. Non ti lascerò, he whispered into her hair, switching between Italian and Spanish. Nunca. They want to take you from me? I'll burn Venice to ash. I'll kill every Russo. I'll paint Italy red. Elena should have been horrified. Instead, she felt safe. For the first time since Javier, since the stairs, since losing everything, she felt safe. She pulled back just enough to look at him. His steel gray eyes were wild, feral, absolutely consumed with her. Alessandro. He kissed her. Desperate, claiming, tasting of fear and relief and blood. Elena kissed him back with equal ferocity, her hands fisting in his ruined shirt, pulling him closer. Closer. Never close enough. When they broke apart, both gasping, Alessandro pressed his forehead to hers. Say Mia, he breathed. You're mine. Si, Elena whispered back. Yes, Luca cleared his throat. Don Vitale. We interrogated the one who survived. Alessandro's expression went arctic. And? It wasn't the Russos who ordered this. Luca's face was grim. It was Salvatore. He's been working with them for months. He wants you dead, the baby dead, and... His eyes flicked to Elena. Her especially. The suite went deathly quiet. Then Alessandro's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. He opened it, and Elena watched all the color drain from his face. He turned the screen toward her. It was a photograph. Of the villa. Of Maria the cook, bound and gagged in the wine cellar. The message read, Come home, nephew. Let's discuss your future. You have 2 hours before I start sending pieces. Zio Salvatore. They rescued Maria, but the villa was compromised. Alessandro made the decision in seconds. Run. The armored convoy tore through the night toward the Dolomites. Alessandro behind the wheel of the lead vehicle, driving like demons chased them. Elena sat beside him, Enzo in her arms, while Luca and his men followed in 2 chase cars. Then Enzo started gasping. No, no, no! Elena's panic was immediate. The baby's chest heaved, his tiny face contorting. "Alessandro!" "I know." His knuckles went white on the wheel as he took a hairpin turn at terrifying speed. One hand left the steering wheel to grip Elena's knee, grounding her, grounding himself. "Keep him upright. Talk to him. Your voice calms him." Elena sang through her terror. Spanish lullabies, prayers, anything. The mountain road climbed higher, the curves sharper. Alessandro drove with lethal precision, but she could see the fear in his jaw, the way his hand trembled against her leg. By the time they reached the chalet, Enzo was breathing normally, but Elena was shaking so hard she could barely stand. The refuge was magnificent. Ancient stone and timber built into the cliff face, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking an abyss of stars and snow. Medieval fortress meets modern luxury. "We're safe here," Alessandro said, carrying their bags inside. "No one knows about this place, not even Salvatore." The fire roared to life. Luca's men established a perimeter, and suddenly, impossibly, they were alone. A family playing house in a mountain fortress, while the world burned below. Alessandro made espresso with surprising domesticity. Elena fed Enzo by the fireplace, the baby's contented sounds filling the silence. The normalcy after so much violence felt surreal, like existing in a dream they'd both wake from screaming. "Tell me something," Elena said softly. "Something true." Alessandro settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I'm terrified," he admitted, "that I'll fail him like I failed Juliana, that I'm poison, that everyone I love," his voice cracked, "everyone I love dies or leaves." Elena turned to face him. "Alessandro, you should leave. Take money, new papers, disappear. You'd be safer. I already love him like he's mine." The words tumbled out. Elena's eyes filled. "And She stopped, but the unspoken confession hung between them like lightning before it strikes. "I love you too." Alessandro saw it in her face, the truth she couldn't say. His control, already fractured, shattered completely. He kissed her with desperate hunger, his hands cupping her face, then sliding into her hair. Elena responded with equal fervor, rising to meet him. He pressed her against the stone wall beside the fireplace, his body hard and warm against hers. "Elena," he groaned against her mouth. "Dio, Elena!" Her legs wrapped around his waist. His hands gripped her thighs, holding her there, kissing her like she was oxygen, and he was drowning. "I'm not leaving," she gasped between kisses. "You can't make me. I'll fight you. I'll fight Salvatore. I'll fight them all." "Then we fight together," Alessandro growled, and kissed her harder. The world narrowed to sensation, his stubble rough against her skin, his hands possessive and reverent, the way he whispered her name like a prayer and a curse. Then the windows exploded. Automatic gunfire stitched across the glass in a deadly pattern. Alessandro threw them both to the floor, covering her and Enzo with his body. Wood splintered. Stone cracked. "Stay down!" Alessandro roared. Through the shattered windows, Elena saw muzzle flashes in the tree line. Dozens of them. An army. Luca burst through the door, blood streaming from his temple. "They found us! I don't know how, but they—" His eyes widened. "Don, your phone. Did you turn off the location?" Alessandro's face went white. He yanked out his phone. The tracking was still active. "Salvatore," he whispered. "He's been tracking me for months." A loudspeaker crackled from outside. Salvatore's voice echoed across the snow, grandfatherly and warm and absolutely monstrous. "Alessandro, nipote mio, my dear nephew, I raised you better than this. Come out. Bring the woman and the bastard. Let's end this as family." Alessandro looked at Elena, at Enzo, at the life he'd briefly imagined was possible. Then he stood, his expression transforming into something beyond human. The Don, the monster. The man who'd once burned a rival's entire bloodline to ash. "Get them to the panic room," he told Luca. "Now!" "Alessandro, no!" Elena grabbed his hand. He kissed her once more, hard, fast, final. "Ti amo," he whispered against her lips. "I love you. And I will burn this mountain down before I let them take you." Then he was gone, disappearing into the darkness with a rifle in his hands and murder in his eyes. The steel door of the panic room slammed shut, sealing Elena and Enzo in darkness. Above them, the world erupted into war. The panic room was a concrete tomb. Elena sat in absolute darkness, Enzo screaming in her arms while hell raged above them. The soundproofing muffled most of it, but she could still hear the rhythmic thump, thump, thump of automatic weapons. Feel the vibrations of explosions through the floor. Her phone's flashlight was the only illumination. She sang, her mother's lullabies, songs she hadn't remembered in years, rocking Enzo through his terror while her own threatened to consume her. "Duerme, mi niño," she whispered. "Sleep, my child. Duerme sin temor. Sleep without fear." Then she heard it. Alessandro's roar, not a shout, a primal sound of absolute rage, the sound of a man who'd stopped being human and become something far more dangerous. The floor shook. Silence fell. Then footsteps. Elena grabbed the heavy flashlight like a weapon, positioning herself between the door and Enzo. If they got through, they'd have to kill her first. The lock disengaged. The steel door swung open. Luca stood there, covered in blood and snow. "Venga," he said simply. "Come." The chalet was destroyed. Bodies lay scattered in the snow like broken dolls. And in the center of the carnage, kneeling in crimson-stained white, was Alessandro. He wasn't injured, but something in him was shattered. Beside him, tied to a chair, was a man Elena didn't recognize, barely conscious, beaten beyond recognition. Luca's men stood in a circle, their faces hard. "He talked," Luca said quietly. "Salvatore orchestrated everything. Venice. Tonight. He's been paid by the Russos for months. The plan was to eliminate you, eliminate Enzo, make it look like a territorial dispute. Then Salvatore takes control, makes peace with the Russos, divides Tuscany." Alessandro didn't move, didn't speak. "Don," Luca continued carefully, "Salvatore raised you after your father died. He was at Enzo's baptism. He held him, blessed him, kissed his forehead, and planned his murder." Alessandro's voice was dead, empty. Elena handed Enzo to Maria, who'd emerged from one of the secure rooms and walked through the snow. Her feet were bare, her dress ruined. She didn't care. She knelt in front of Alessandro, gripping his face, forcing him to look at her. "Alessandro, mira me. Look at me." His eyes were hollow. "He was like a father to me, Elena. My padrino. And he, I know." Her voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "And now you end this. You go to war. You burn his world down. And then you come back to us." "Elena, no." She kissed him hard, rough, claiming, pouring every ounce of her fury and love into it. When she pulled back, her eyes blazed. "I don't care what you have to do. I don't care how dark you have to go. You end him, and you come back. Because that baby needs his father, and I—" Her voice cracked. "I need you. Ti amo, Alessandro. So you fight, and you win, and you come home." Something rekindled in Alessandro's eyes. The emptiness filled with purpose, with rage, with love. He stood, pulling Elena up with him, kissed her once more, a promise sealed in blood and snow. "Stay here with Luca," he commanded. 48 hours. If I'm not back, you'll be back." Alessandro turned to his men. When he spoke, it was the voice of a dawn, of death itself. Salvatore is at the monastery in Val di Fassa. He thinks I'm dead. He's meeting with the Russos to celebrate." His smile was terrifying. "Let's give them a surprise. Prepariamoci per la guerra." Prepare for war. As they loaded into vehicles, Elena watched from the chalet doorway, Enzo in her arms. Alessandro paused at the convoy, turned back. Their eyes met across the blood-stained snow. Then he was gone. 47 hours later, Elena was pacing the chalet like a caged animal when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her heart stopped. She answered, heavy breathing. Then, "Elena. Alessandro? I need you to listen very carefully." His voice was wrong, strained, in pain. "Salvatore is dead. The Russos have retreated, but there's a problem." "What problem? Are you hurt?" "Capitano Ricci was at the monastery. He saw everything. He knows what I am, what I've done." Alessandro's breathing was labored. "There's a warrant. For me, for you, for everyone." Elena's world tilted. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying run. Take Enzo. Use the papers in the safe, new identities, money, everything. Luca will get you to Switzerland, then disappear." "No." "Elena." His voice broke. "They're coming for all of us. If you stay, if you're connected to me, you'll go to prison. Enzo will be taken. I can fight this, but not if I'm protecting you. So please, per favore, run." Tears streamed down Elena's face. "Where are you?" "Turning myself in 1 hour. It's the only way to buy you time to—" The line went dead. Elena stared at the phone, at Enzo sleeping peacefully in his bassinet, at the life they'd built from ashes and blood. Then she made her choice. She grabbed her coat. "Luca!" she shouted. "Get the car. We're going to the Carabinieri station." "Signora, the Don said—" "I don't care what he said." Elena's voice was pure steel. "He's not doing this alone. We're family. And family doesn't run." She looked at Enzo one last time, then at the door. "Let's go get our stubborn idiot back." Elena arrived at the Carabinieri station to find it empty. Ricci was gone. The warrant was fake. And Alessandro had lied to her. Luca's grim smile told her everything. "The Don needed you safe, away from the monastery. He knew you'd try to stop him." "Where?" Elena's voice could have cut steel. "Val di Fassa. But Signora—" She was already in the car. The abandoned Benedictine monastery clung to the mountainside like a stone ghost. Snow fell softly as Salvatore arrived with Don Tommaso Russo and his son Marco, plus a dozen armed men. They were laughing. "Finally," Salvatore said, embracing Tommaso. "The Vitale line ends tonight. We'll divide Tuscany, make peace, and—" A convoy rolled into the courtyard. Luca emerged, directing men who carried body bags. 3 of them. "Ecco," Luca said grimly. "Here they are. Alessandro Vitale, the woman, the baby, as promised." Salvatore approached the bags, unzipped the first one, and expecting Alessandro's face. Instead, it was empty. "Che cazzo! What the— Did you really think I'd die that easily, Uncle?" Alessandro stepped from the monastery shadows, very much alive, and in his arms, wrapped in blankets against the cold, was Enzo, sleeping peacefully. Beside him, fierce and beautiful, was Elena. Salvatore's face went white. The Russos reached for weapons, but 20 red laser dots appeared on their chests. Alessandro's men surrounded the courtyard, emerging from every shadow. "You're dead," Salvatore breathed. "The chalet was a test," Alessandro said coldly, "and you failed spectacularly." He descended the monastery steps, like a king approaching his execution block. Enzo didn't even stir. "You became weak!" Salvatore's voice rose with desperation. "The baby made you soft. A Don can't be a father. Your own father taught me that. I did this for the family, for the empire." Watch me be both. Alessandro passed Enzo to Elena, his eyes never leaving Salvatore. Then he pulled out a tablet, turning it toward the Russos. Wire transfers, Salvatore's accounts, payments from Naples, dates matching every attack. He swiped. Photos of secret meetings. Salvatore and Marco Russo in Venice, in Rome. Planning. Testimony from the men we captured at the chalet, all singing the same song. Alessandro's voice was ice. And recordings. Every phone call. Every betrayal. He turned to the Russos. You wanted to see weakness? This is what happens to men who threaten my family. Tommaso raised his hands. Vitale, we can negotiate. No. Alessandro's gun appeared. We can't. He could have ended it quickly. One shot to Salvatore's head. Clean. Strategic. But Elena was watching, and she'd told him to send a message. This is for the Venice Hotel, Alessandro said, shooting Salvatore's kneecap. The old man screamed, collapsing. This is for the chalet. The other knee, more screaming. This is for laying hands on what's mine. A shoulder. Salvatore writhed in the snow. Alessandro walked closer, standing over the man who'd raised him, taught him, betrayed him. His face was empty of everything except cold, systematic purpose. And this, he said softly, pressing the gun to Salvatore's temple, is for making my son stop breathing. The shot echoed across the mountains. Alessandro turned to the Russos, who stood frozen in terror. Tell every family from here to Sicily. The Vitales don't forgive. We don't forget. And we protect what's ours. I'd come for me again, and I'll erase your bloodline from history. The Russos fled without another word. Silence fell. Snow continued to fall, covering the blood, making everything clean and white again. Alessandro stood alone in the courtyard, the weight of what he'd done settling over him like a shroud. Elena walked to him, Enzo still sleeping in her arms. She should have been horrified, disgusted, terrified. Instead, she took his blood-stained hand and pressed it to her cheek. Andiamo a casa, she whispered. Let's go home. Alessandro looked at her, this woman who'd seen him at his absolute worst and still chose him. Tears tracked down his face, mixing with snow and blood. Si, he breathed. A casa. Home. But as they turned to leave, Elena's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. She opened it. A photograph of the villa, some burning, and a message. Congratulations on your victory, Don Vitale. But you forgot about the Sicilians. We're coming for the woman. We're coming for the baby. And this time, there's nowhere you can hide. Don Carmine Bianchi. Elena looked up at Alessandro, her face draining of color. Who, she whispered, is Don Carmine Bianchi? Alessandro's expression answered before his words did. Salvatore's cousin, the most dangerous man in Sicily. He pulled Elena and Enzo closer, his jaw set with terrible resolve. And I just declared war on his entire family. The war with the Sicilians lasted 3 brutal months, but Alessandro Vitale didn't just survive, he conquered. Don Carmine Bianchi now paid tribute to Tuscany. The message was received. The Vitale family was untouchable. 8 months later, spring had transformed everything. The villa no longer felt like a fortress. Warm, golden light replaced the cold marble darkness. Gardens exploded with roses and lavender. And for the first time in its 500-year history, the ancient halls echoed with laughter. Enzo was the source of most of it. At 9 months, he was everywhere, crawling at dangerous speeds, pulling himself up on furniture, babbling constantly. He'd reach for Alessandro with chubby fists, shouting, "Papa!" Then turn to Elena. "Mama!" No distinction. No difference. They were his parents. Both of them. Today was their wedding day. Elena stood in the villa's private chapel, a simple white dress that made her look like a Renaissance Madonna. Alessandro waited at the altar in a mourning suit, Luca beside him as best man, actually smiling for once. Maria wept in the front pew, holding Enzo in a tiny tuxedo that had cost more than Elena's first car. The guest list was small, 20 people, the inner circle, the ones who'd bled for this family and lived. The priest, well compensated by Alessandro's 8-figure donation to church charities, blessed them with extra enthusiasm. When it came time for vows, Elena spoke in fluent Italian now, no trace of hesitation. Mi hai dato uno scopo quando non avevo niente, she said, her voice steady despite the tears. You gave me purpose when I had nothing. Mi hai affidato il tuo tesoro più grande. Mi hai insegnato che l'amore non ci rende deboli, ci rende guerrieri. You trusted me with your greatest treasure. You taught me that love doesn't make us weak. It makes us warriors. Ti amo, Alessandro, per sempre. I love you forever. Alessandro's turn. His voice broke on the first word. Sei entrata all'inferno per salvare mio figlio, he managed. You walked into hell to save my son. Sei rimasta per salvare me. Ero re di niente finché non hai fatto di noi una famiglia. You stayed to save me. I was king of nothing until you made us a family. His hands trembled as he held hers. Tutto ciò che sono, tutto ciò che ho, appartiene a te e a lui. Sei la mia regina. Everything I am, everything I have, belongs to you and him. You are my queen. The kiss was tender, deep, witnessed by everyone who mattered. When they turned to face their family, Enzo shrieked with delight and launched himself from Maria's arms. Alessandro caught him mid-flight, and the three of them stood there, a portrait of the impossible. The reception spilled onto the terrace, and Enzo's first birthday cake appeared, a massive creation he immediately destroyed with both fists, smearing frosting everywhere. His delighted laughter was infectious. Alessandro stood with Luca, watching Elena try to clean their son, while he just made it worse. I built an empire on fear, Alessandro said quietly. She built a home on love. He shook his head, smiling. She won. Si, Luca agreed. She did. As the sun set over Tuscany, painting everything gold, Elena pulled Alessandro aside. Her hand went to her stomach, a gesture he recognized instantly. His eyes went wide. Elena. 8 weeks, she whispered. I wanted to be sure before. Alessandro pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her neck. She felt his shoulders shake, joy, terror, everything. Another chance to get it right, he whispered. God, we'll get it right together, Elena promised. They kissed as the first stars appeared, while Enzo played at their feet and their family celebrated around them. For one perfect moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Then Elena's phone buzzed. She almost ignored it, but something made her look. A message, unknown number, a photograph. Her blood turned to ice. It was a sonogram, but not hers. She hadn't had one yet, and written across it in red. Congratulations on the pregnancy, Elena. Such a shame you won't live to see this one born either. Javier sends his regards. He's out of prison, and he's coming for what you stole from him. A friend. Elena's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the terrace stones. Alessandro was at her side instantly. Amore, what? She showed him the phone with shaking hands. Alessandro's face went absolutely murderous. He pulled out his own phone, barking orders to Luca, but Elena barely heard him, because she was staring at the sonogram, at the date stamp. It was from yesterday, which meant someone had been close enough to photograph it. Someone was inside the villa. She looked around at the celebration, at Maria, at Luca's men, at the servers, the musicians, the guards. One of them was a traitor. and Javier was coming. Alessandro pulled her close, his lips at her ear. Non ti perderò, he growled. I won't lose you. Mai. Never. But as Elena looked at Enzo playing innocently nearby, at her hand on her pregnant belly, at the family she'd built from ashes, she realized the truth. They'd won the war with the Sicilians, but the most dangerous enemy had been waiting all along. And this time, he wanted more than her life. He wanted everything. From the shadows at the edge of the terrace, someone watched, smiled, and disappeared into the Tuscan night. The real war was just beginning.